Hey folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and this channel is all about running great, one-shot adventures and short campaigns. And those of you who have watched this channel before know that I'm a big fan of horror, especially for one-shots. I find that horror adventures are tightly written, dangerous, and generally nobody minds if their characters go insane or all die at the end. Vaesen, the RPG that's all about 19th century Nordic horror, is one of my favorite horror RPGs. I think that Vaesen does such a wonderful job setting a cold and lonely mood, and its investigations, which always center around some old, horrific folklore, often feature familiar but unpredictable antagonists. And so today I'm going to review Grain and Bones, what a cool name, an adventure that sends the investigators far away to a bog, where they find that an old abandoned mill has suddenly come back to life. And all of the nearby farmers have become obsessed with bringing their grain to that mill and trading away their precious resources for an unusual amount of gold, and then quickly, completely losing their sanity soon afterwards. And then the PCs are entangled in a mystery revolving around old vendettas, medieval laws, and supernatural traditions that have been lost to time. Before I dive in, I'll say up front that Grain and Bones offers some departures from the traditional Vaesen structure of a mystery. There's no opening letter to the PCs, there's no countdowns to catastrophe, and to stop the curse, the PCs are going to have to really dive deep and delve into the historical research that's part of the setting, not just look for the way to defeat the Vaesen at the center of the adventure. Well, if this sounds interesting, then grab your wagon load of grain, it'll be fine, and get ready for some serious spoilers. Because not only am I going to give you a full review of Grain and Bones, but I'm also going to give you GMs some tips and tricks on how to run this Vaesen adventure like a pro. Grain and Bones is written by Morton Grice. It's part of the Free League Workshop, which means it's written by a fan, and you can find it on DriveThruRPG just for a few bucks. It runs 14 pages long, and you can easily finish it in one 4-hour session, or even less, as I've sometimes done it. The background behind this adventure is really key to understanding its mystery. You see, hundreds of years ago, Bishop Jacob Erlandsson had a problem. The king had ordered him to build a castle on a very short timeline, and he was running out of time. While surveying the land, looking for a good place to build this quickie castle, the bishop stumbled upon a family of trolls, and he asked them to help. The trolls' leader, whose name was Skram, agreed to build the castle, but trolls, being fond of games and riddles and that sort of thing, offered the bishop a special deal. If the bishop guessed his name, well, he'd build the castle for free. Yeah, it's a pretty strange deal to offer somebody, but trolls. But the bishop, you see, well, he had already heard the troll's name being called out by his mother one day. So after the castle was built, the bishop surprised the troll by revealing his name. Skram and his fellow trolls were angry, and they felt totally screwed. But hey, a deal's a deal, and trolls don't break deals. So they left the land and they settled in a nearby bog where they built a mill to supply the new castle. But then a few years later, the bishop screwed the trolls again when he built his own mill nearer to the castle. And you see, medieval law at that time was very specific. It required people to buy their grain from the closest mill. So the castle's residents had to use the bishop's mill, not the troll's mill, which was a little further away. And the trolls were really furious and felt screwed again, and they just completely moved away, vanishing into the barrows of the earth. Fast forward a few centuries. Over the years, the Castle Hjorthelm, fell to war and ruin. And now, in the modern age of the 1860s or so, the laws changed again. Mills were allowed to compete with each other. So the trolls woke up and returned. They reopened their mill, and they were really hungry to make up for the centuries of lost profit. And boy, did they. They started trading gold for grain and bones from the nearby farmers, many of whom had built their farms from the stone ruins of that original castle. Still angry at how they got screwed over years ago, the trolls cursed their gold that they gave away. The troll gold causes greed, obsessiveness, and the eventual complete loss of sanity. 3 farms have already cashed in their entire grain supply for the year in exchange for troll gold, and some of those farmers have gone completely nuts, killing their farm animals and workers and boiling them down to bones to trade back to the trolls for more gold. It is nasty stuff. And the trolls don't really care about the effects of their troll gold. In their eyes, they're running a very successful business and also getting a little bit of vengeance against that long-dead bishop and his people. And this is where the PCs get involved. One summer day, there's a knock on the door of their estate, and 2 Nisei, think little house elves or dwarves that protect farms, are there desperate to ask the PCs to interfere because they've seen that these farms are turning into madness and they don't know what the cause exactly is. I like that this opening is a little different from traditional Vaesen games, where the PCs usually receive letters that imply supernatural weirdness, but here you have 2 grumpy dwarves showing up demanding urgent assistance, and the crisis is actually not too far from the PC's headquarters. They don't have to go on a long journey. It's just kind of right there around the corner. So the PCs can also go back and forth from their headquarters to the farms to research. And I think this little twist, while it feels minor, actually makes this adventure feel very different than other Vaesen adventures. The adventure itself is fairly open-ended. There are 3 farms to explore: the bog where the troll's mill operates, the ruins of Castle Hjorthelm, and the Hjorthelm Mill, the one that the bishop originally built to supply the grain to the locals, and it's actually still in operation. The farms are in different states of tragedy. In one, the farmer is ill-tempered and spends his whole life counting his gold. Think Thorin in The Hobbit as he falls to Smaug's dragon sickness.
There's nothing wrong with counting gold all day. Look, it's so perfect and shiny.
In another farm, the farm wife is about to slaughter all of her animals to ship their bones to the troll's mill. And at the 3rd farm, the darkest farm, the pug farm, everyone is dead. Corpses hang from the barn, bodies are getting boiled for their bones, and there's an axe murderer skulking in the shadows, ready to take the PCs out to trade their bones into the trolls. It's a grisly and horrifying location. And you can tell I think that's really cool. It's probably the most horrific a Vaesen adventure has gotten in my experience. And in exploring these farms and talking to the farmers, the PCs will find a pattern. The farmers all bring their goods to the mill in the bog, and they increasingly get obsessed and eventually fall into murderous insanity days or weeks afterwards. A couple of key NPCs also live in the area, including Old Tom, a drunk who knows all about the lore of the area, as well as the local nosy priest Ludwig, who has a collection of very old books, including some that tell the story of the original bishop and the troll Skram. Now, while the adventure says that you can use Father Ludwig in a few different ways to impede the player's investigation, like questioning their plans or going after the trolls himself, they're just very vague suggestions. When I ran this adventure, I used Father Ludwig in a more dark way. I said that he had stolen some of the troll's gold from the farmers in an effort to understand its properties. But now he's secretly come under the influence of the troll's gold himself. And he's trying to resist it, but he's failing and it's too strong for him, and eventually he'll go completely crazy and murderous as well. So when the players first meet Father Ludwig, I have him be helpful, maybe a little quirky and erratic, but over the course of the adventure, he will succumb to the insanity of the troll gold, unless the PCs discover that he's been hiding it away under his bed. And this approach adds a more complex NPC into the adventure and someone that the PCs can potentially save or influence, or he can really turn into a complete murderous adversary if the GM needs another antagonist here. So give that a try. Eventually, the PCs will realize that the mill at the center of the bog is kind of the cause of all these issues, and they'll want to go there. The bog itself is enchanted by trollcraft, which means that unless the PCs find a guide, they'll quickly become hopelessly lost inside of it. I wish the adventure provided more bog hazards here for the GM to use, or to frighten the players or challenge them in some way. So when I ran the adventure, I had to make the bog just a little bit more dreamlike and insert some physical challenges like a massive ravine that is inexplicably blocking the player's path, or there's a shaky old bridge in places surrounded by sinkholes that can grab and suffocate people who aren't careful. I leave carcasses of deer and other animals where it's clear that all of their bones have been removed. And as the players explore the bog, they'll spy the silhouette of a creepy, tall humanoid staring at them in the distance. And this is actually one of the trolls that's obviously there and watching them. And if you do all this, it just makes that bog really creepy and scary. In the center of the bog is the troll's mill, grinding away. There are 4 trolls working the mill, 3 of which are full-on trolls, and the 4th, Sister Oda, is more human-like. She's the tall one that I had spying on the PCs in the bog. And maybe she's even a changeling. Each of the trolls has different personalities. Oda, for example, is more empathetic to the plight of the humans, and she can be better reasoned with. There's also a young boy, Thomas, trapped in a cage in the mill, who the trolls basically use as slave labor since his father sold him to the trolls in exchange for more gold.
Oh, my son Thomas. Yes, he was a very useless boy. I did sell him to the trolls, but he's probably working hard for them now. Or maybe he got eaten.
The adventure mentions that this boy, Thomas, is from one of the nearby farms, the Crot Farm, but that farm is actually not mentioned in the adventure at all. This is probably a mistake, but I thought that was a missed opportunity because if earlier in the adventure the players find out that a father sold off his boy for gold, is a good horrifying moment that shows the power of the troll gold, and it'll make the PCs look for the boy, kind of gives them another little quest to do. So when I run this adventure, I actually said that he was the son of that axe-wielding maniac at the pug farm, and the players can find like a diary entry that says that he had sold his boy off. And this just connects everything a little bit better together. So to prevent the cursed troll gold from spreading all over the countryside, because obviously more and more farmers are going to come here for this gold, the PCs have to stop the trolls. Now, this being Vaesen, a head-on fight against a family of 4 trolls will end in a complete bloodbath. A single troll is more than a match for a group of investigators in Vaesen. And so 4 of them, well, there's just no chance at all at like bringing some guns and clearing them out. And I like this. And burning the mill down doesn't work either because, well, it's kind of magically protected and it'll rebuild itself a few weeks later, now with angrier trolls. The best way for the PCs to stop the trolls is through negotiation and research. The trolls argue that what they're doing is in the right. The law allows them to operate a mill, and the farmers being impacted by their troll gold are technically the heirs to the castle where the bishop screwed them, especially since they built a lot of their farms from the remnants of that castle. The trolls actually have a good legal case here, which is probably something that's never been said in the history of role-playing games. So how the players tackle this problem is entirely open-ended. They can try appealing to the trolls, like maybe they can pull Sister Oda aside, appeal to her good nature, and get her to convince the other trolls to stop poisoning the humans. Or, in the case of one time I ran this, they can concoct an entire fake legal case.
Now, Mr. Troll, let me read this to you. Pursuant to public health regulations, the establishment and operation of a mill in a bog by a troll or any other entity is strictly prohibited due to the inherent risk of contamination of goods and materials processed therein. Do I have to say anything else, sir?
Maybe this is where Father Ludwig and his books can really help, since he can bring church doctrine with him to reinforce the argument. Or they can even convince the Nisei, those little house spirits who showed up on their front porch at the start of the adventure, to occupy the mill and annoy the trolls until they leave. Or they might convince the trolls to participate in some kind of game, like a riddle, like finding the name of one of the trolls. But as long as the PCs can convince the trolls to knock it off, the adventure is ended and the region is free from the curse. And that's Grain and Bones. So what do I think? I like a lot of things about this adventure, but I admit I was a little let down by how open-ended the ending of the adventure was. But first, let's talk about some of my favorite parts. I like that there's an interesting, authentic history described here, and how, like many great Vaesen adventures, the trolls aren't outright villains. They have a strong case here against the region. I like that there's several places to explore, and some of them are straight out of a horror movie. That said, the adventure's ending, I think, is too open-ended. Like one time when I ran this, my players visited one farm, they beelined from there directly to the troll mill, and then they burned it down. And then I had to say, well, a few weeks pass and the troll's mill is magically working again, which was frustrating to my players. They started trying to investigate how to permanently burn down the mill, and well, I really just had to start making things up at this point, since the adventure doesn't really offer any ways to think about that. And then when they finally decided to talk to the trolls, it was again entirely up to me as a GM as to whether their argument worked well enough. The adventure just doesn't give players enough solid clues and suggestions for resolving that curse. But I think this is very fixable. First, don't make finding the troll's mill so easy. Like, don't let them just find it right away. Add some rules here. You can say that you can't find the mill unless you have grain or bones to sell to the trolls. The trolls will keep you confused and turned around unless they think that you're a local farmer who wants to do business with them. After all, the trolls don't want anybody visiting their mill. So require the players to maybe disguise themselves, perhaps with stuff from some of those abandoned farms, to get to the troll's mill. Or require them to convince one of those cursed farmers to take them, knowing that, well, returning to the mill might drive that man insane, giving them a liability as they head into that bog. Kind of like bringing Gollum to Mount Doom, not such a great idea. Second, pre-plan a few surefire ways to convince the trolls to stop. I like to say that Sister Oda, the changeling troll, while empathetic to the human's plight, won't make a case against her brothers unless she sees the damage for herself. The players need to talk her into taking her to the pug farm for her to be convinced. And then say that Sister Oda can't ever really convince her brothers while her bestial aunt is around. That's one of the more nasty trolls. And of course, they have to figure out how not to get eaten by that bestial troll as they lure her away, which is a fun problem to figure out. Or I'd suggest using the newer mill, which is barely described. Perhaps the miller, Sven Larsson, still has old legal records that gives him the rights of ownership over the troll's mill should he maybe purchase it for a measly sum, like right of first refusal to buy other nearby mills. And then the PCs can get that document along with Father Ludwig to validate them and prove to the trolls that they don't have a case to maintain their mill. All I'm saying is that if you think about a couple variations of how to convince the trolls, the adventure is going to run a little better. Oh, and if your players are going to try to burn the place down, which has happened in every single time I've tried to run this, you go ahead and let them, but make it hard to actually burn down. The adventure says that it'll grow back in a few weeks, but don't do that. Just say the wood is wet and it's old and it's protected by troll magic. And so perhaps they need the priest to find an old book that gives like a simple ritual for warding off that troll's magic long enough to burn the mill down, or they have to get the trolls out of it somehow, which of course requires that they rid the priest's evidence of the troll gold that I said he was cursed by any point. Like if they're gonna burn it down, just say that they really can't unless they do extra work to do it. Don't have it just grow back. Grain and Bones just works better if you give the players concrete solutions that require a few steps before they can get those trolls to leave. And just adding in a few of these elements I find helps the adventure a lot, still maintains the agency that it gives to the players to find a creative solution, but also gives them some real solutions instead of just hand-waving a role-playing scene at the end. I also wish the adventure was a little better organized. Not being an official Free League adventure, it's understandable that the production values and the layout aren't as good as a published product, but the adventure really needs more obvious headers like NPC stats and more clearly separate out the old history of the locations from their current state. GMs, just expect to read this a couple times before you're fully comfortable enough to run it. By the way, I created a few extra handouts for this adventure and created some tokens and portraits for some of the NPCs who aren't depicted, and I'll post a link in the description below so you can grab them if you're going to go run this adventure. I think it's wonderful that a company like Free League encourages fans to create their own Vaesen adventures, and despite the fact that it has a few rough edges, Grain and Bones is nearly as good as many of the official published Vaesen adventures. I really like how it presents a mystery where the damage has already been done and the PCs need to research and understand old laws and history in order to succeed. That's like a really creative twist, even if it's not always presented perfectly. So in the end, Grain and Bones is a solid adventure to consider running for your Vaesen group. If you enjoyed this review and want to see more Vaesen reviews like it, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and I will try to do more of these. And if you've played Grain and Bones or maybe even run it, I'd love to know what your experience was like. Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, I'm JC, and just remember, if you walk into an old mill occupied by 4 angry trolls, burning it down, not exactly the worst option.